So, welcome back to Saying Yes Again, a journey to love, life, and second chances. So, we're excited again to be back to bring you another episode. And we have another amazing guest with us today. So, many of you listening found love after divorce, after loss, after rebuilding your life from the ground up. And we talk a lot about that on the podcast, the emotional side of things. But today, we're going to talk about something equally as important, and that's protecting what you rebuilt.
Yes,
Because second chances aren't just about a love story, it's also financial, it's legal, it's generational. Wouldn't you agree?
definitely.
Definitely. So most people who remarry or start over in midlife, what do you think?
They don't realize how much divorce and remarrying completely change their financial plan, their beneficiaries, and what happens to everything that they've accumulated over their working life. So that's why today's conversation is so important.
Welcome to Saying Yes Again.
A podcast about second chances, real love, and opening your heart after heartbreak.
We're your hosts, Dr. Lisa,
And Tony,
a midlife couple who found love after divorce. And now we're here to share our story.
and to remind you that it's never too late to say yes again.
So put on your headphones and listen closely because your next yes could be the one that changes everything. Yes. So to help us today, we are joined by attorney Laurie Thomas Williams of the Reed Thomas Law Group. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about Laurie and then we're going to really get into this conversation. So, attorney Laurie Thomas Williams is a successful business owner. She attended Savannah State University and obtained a Bachelor of Science in Biology with a focus on biotechnology. So law runs through her veins. She ran her mother's law office for several years while in college and then decided to follow in her footsteps. So fast forward to today, she is the proud partner of the Reed Thomas Law Group, and they have many, many areas of law that they practice. They serve the communities, they serve families, they serve couples, they serve business owners. So welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we're excited to get into this conversation today because, a lot of times when people actually have gone through this walk of rebuilding themselves after going through something like a divorce, sometimes it's, unfortunately, it might be that they've lost a partner, right? That they're widowed even.
Yes.
There's
Mm.
blended families that we have to take into account and all of that. It's time that we really start to talk about building family legacy and building wealth. So tell us a little bit about before we get into the conversation, who or what was sort of the catapult for you moving into the field of law? What was that turning point for you where you felt like this is what I want to do?
I have to say, definitely running my mom's law office, right? Exposed me to a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. She primarily handled like family law. We did wills, we did bankruptcy, we did personal injury, she did criminal cases, those kinds of things. And so I kind of saw firsthand before I went to law school kind of the impact it had on people. And
Mhm.
then I wanted to be a doctor. That's what I wanted to be. And then that's what I like, that's why I majored in biology, but life had a different plan for me. And so when life happened and I found myself divorced after college with 3 small kids at the time,
Yes.
I decided that I was going to go into what I knew how to do. I knew how to run a law office, right? I knew how to do all the work. I was meeting people coming out of law school and I was going, these are not rocket scientists. So like if they could do it, I know I can. I mean, my
Right.
mom's a like very intelligent woman. So she's like intimidating in her own right. So like just
Wow.
following that legacy was like intimidating. But then when I saw the people coming out and passing the bar, I was like, oh, I can do this. So
Mhm.
me and my kids packed up and we went down to Jacksonville and started over.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So very familiar with both sides then, the whole starting over as well as,
Yes.
being a mom and raising kids and then building your own business, now into a successful law practice. So you have, I'm sure,
Yeah.
lot to share with us. So, why do you think it's so important for us to have this conversation, when people find themselves in the predicament where they're rebuilding their lives?
Just because, for me, for personal experience, also for business experience, right? Like having dealt with clientele in all walks of life, starting over, you're in a different chapter and the stakes are different. Like the first time around, you might have been younger. A lot of people get married younger and then they get divorced about midlife. And then, most marriages start, there is such a thing as a 15-year itch. And so most marriages, that's about midlife for most people, right? And
Mm,
so, by that point, they've developed or they've acquired retirement benefits or a house, or they've had some kids with their spouse. And now you're separating and you're going from a two income household to a one income household. Your retirement accounts are split. Maybe you had to refinance and pull out the equity in your house or sell the house or things like that. So it's a totally different time. And then if you're starting over with another person, now you're potentially talking about blending families with that person,
mhm,
blending, potentially having adult children involved,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. And then how do you plan for your assets and those kinds of things going forward and moving forward together, but also being protective of not only to some degree your heart, but also your
mm,
assets, right? Because you don't want to end up in that situation again, where you're starting over again. And the reality is that, as they say, 50% of marriages fail. I think sometimes the statistics can be higher even with a second marriage. Don't quote me on what the statistics are,
yes,
but
Okay.
I think planning helps,
Mm,
right?
absolutely.
mm,
And you are correct. The statistics are pretty high for that second marriage, divorce. I think we had talked about that in one of our
yeah.
previous episodes. So, yeah, it's really important to kind of get that planning, yeah, in place.
I mean,
Oh,
that's definitely one of those things. It's just, I mean, I think anything can be, you know, um, what is the saying? Proper planning leads, I can't think of the saying, but proper
yes,
planning is
yes.
important.
It's very important. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things I think is why we wanted to kind of have this discussion because we don't talk a lot about finances,
No.
in our communities, especially. We don't talk a lot about finance and we don't talk a lot about estate planning or building a legacy, building wealth. So, yeah, so this is a really important topic.
Normal side of things, but obviously the financial side is equally as important,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, Lori, what are the biggest estate planning or financial planning mistakes you see people make after a divorce?
Biggest thing is doing
Yeah.
nothing. Doing nothing at all, and
Right.
assuming that, like, the divorce, right, is
Yeah.
gonna handle everything. "Oh, well, we already divided the retirement account, or we already did all the things." Well, what about, did you change the beneficiary on your life insurance at work, right?
Mm.
I read a case recently, about a woman who or guy who died, and 25 years prior had his girlfriend on his life insurance policy, had
Wow.
gotten married, had kids, and, like, all kinds of
Oh,
stuff, never changed the girlfriend from the life insurance policy,
wow.
and she took the it was like a couple $1,000,000 in a life insurance
Oh,
policy she took over everybody else, and everybody was trying to, like, fight it in court and things like that, and the judge was like, "It's a contract.
it's a
The life
yeah.
insurance policy is a contract. I can't do anything about it. If he didn't change his beneficiary, there's literally nothing I can do."
Right.
Wow.
Wow.
That is an excellent
Oh my
point,
So
god.
Larry.
yeah, so doing absolutely nothing, and just and that goes for both sides. So it's not just your personal side, right? A lot of
Okay.
people have side hustles, side businesses, and things like that. So you think
Yes.
about, oh, I didn't change. Oh, I just got to change the life insurance policy, and that's enough. No, who'd you put as your beneficiary on your bank accounts?
Mm.
Who'd you
Wow.
have as your advanced directive person to make decisions about whether or not you live or die? It probably was your spouse, right? Those
Mm.
documents have to be redone again. Who's going to have your stuff in your will? Those kind of things have to be done again. If you own a
Yes.
business and your business operating agreement says your interest goes over to your will to be determined by, or to be left in accordance with your will, that's leaving your entire business that you've started
Mm.
to potentially, to potentially somebody else. And it's
Right.
creating other issues. Because in Georgia, the really important thing to understand is, and some other states have this too, is once you divorce, if you have a will that says you leave it to your spouse and you divorce, the Georgia law treats that spouse as having died before you. So
Mhm, mhm,
they
mm.
they they skip that person. And so then if you don't have anybody behind them, then your stuff could end up going to the state.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Are
Wow.
That is
going like,
exceptional.
especially if you don't have any kids or anything like that. So it's important to not do nothing.
Right, 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 right.
Very important. Very
Right.
important.
Make sure
Do
you check those
something.
documents. Make sure
You
you
take
check those
nothing else from
documents.
this, do something.
That's exactly why we have her on our
Right,
show
right, right,
today.
right.
This type of information.
Uh-huh.
Exactly, exactly. So speaking about documents, what documents are important for anyone to have, whether they're single, married, divorced, and then of those documents, you already, mentioned some of them. What should you update immediately after a divorce that most people typically would forget? I mean, I think you mentioned most of it, but what's really
Yeah.
important to have as far as
Yeah.
documents?
So anybody over the age of 18 should have a will. Absolutely should have a will. Doesn't matter if you think you have something or don't have something, go ahead and leave a plan, right? And it can be a very simplistic will. It just needs to be executed properly. Michael Jackson had a
Mhm.
$500 will. I tell people that all the time and they're like, "What?" Yes, he had a $500
Yes.
will for his multi-million dollar estate because he put a plan in place. It didn't
Right.
For him it didn't have to be elaborate. It was a plan, right?
Okay.
About how he wanted his things to go to his to the people he wanted it to go to. Update your power of attorneys if you have one.
Mm,
Update your healthcare directives. And in Georgia, in some states, it can be called an advance directive. It's called a healthcare directive.
mhm.
Here in Georgia, make sure your beneficiary designations are updated on your life insurance
Right.
policies, on your bank accounts, on anything that you would have designated a beneficiary. Make sure those
Mm,
things are are updated.
Okay.
And then if you own a business, I would say just make sure that you have updated any shareholder or operating agreements and those kinds of things, or any business type of insurance things. And that's
yeah,
also if like you have a business partner who who's no longer with you, then you want to make sure you're updating those kind of things there too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. These,
Okay.
Because I've
these
seen a
are
lot of
excellent.
spouses own businesses together, and then
Oh,
and
yeah.
things go wrong after they get divorced too. I've seen that happen.
They have to liquidate, so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of that play out in the media.
She brings up some
Hmm.
excellent points and stuff that, people with lack of knowledge or just innocently ignore or just not aware of.
Yeah, yeah,
So again, this is why we
Absolutely.
have Lori on the show.
yeah.
So, yeah. What conversation should couples in second marriages and honestly, even first marriages be having that they often avoid? What are the taboos that
Money,
people to talk about?
Money,
death,
Money. Yes.
money, death, taxes, right? The things that always come from
money, death, and
um,
taxes. Yeah.
money, death, and taxes, right? But like, I think the most important thing to understand is that like love doesn't replace clarity. And I
Okay.
can't tell you the number of times that I have gotten into that I've done a divorce and the parties have been married for 40 years and the wife does not even know how to pay the mortgage,
Mm,
what is owed on the mortgage, how much her husband makes,
mm,
Oh,
where any of those things are. And then as somebody coming in to represent her, I am like just like scrambling, trying to find out where everything is, doing
yeah.
mhm.
searches and trying to figure stuff out. Like and I've seen that happen as well in the death of like my own father, where we were scrambling to try to figure out where all his stuff was because he just didn't have those conversations with us, right? So it
Right.
was, and he was in his second marriage. We didn't know what he left to his current wife at the time when he passed. We didn't know what he had left to her. We didn't know what eventually we found that they had a prenuptial agreement that overrode like everything else. But it was
Okay.
still like, okay, if we didn't know or we didn't find it, then
Yeah.
what?
Right, you
Right?
wouldn't right, right.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are I mean, definitely those things. I think having definitely, if you're second starting over and you guys have adult children, you got to
Mhm,
have a conversations with your adult children about what expectations are in the event of death or disability, because that's the
mhm.
other piece that people don't think about. I mean, if somebody goes to the hospital, how many times do children want to come in, adult children want to come in and and then start to call the shots about what happens to
Yeah,
their
Yeah,
mom or their dad.
yeah. True.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's just wonderful
Yeah.
information.
Those
Mhm.
are some good things, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. So we need to
Absolutely.
start having some conversations
Definitely.
in the
Definitely.
Mhm.
community. Um,
Absolutely.
so this is gonna be, again, like you said, just some important things to share.
Are you taking notes, honey?
I'm taking notes.
Okay.
So many of our listeners listening, again, just maybe they might even be starting over financially,
Hmm.
honestly, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it just hits that way. So, what should their financial and legal focus be on now that it's probably much different than it was maybe in their 20s or 30s?
So I'm gonna give you the typical lawyer answer, which is it depends, right?
Right, right,
And then I'm also going to give you the other lawyer answer, which I have to give a caveat here. I am not a financial planner, so this is not financial advice, right?
right.
But what we do in our firm a lot, especially with our business owners, is we plan for liability protection, right? And
Okay.
so if you are starting over, you do need to start incorporating that into your plans going forward. So you want to create stability, protection, and intentional growth in whatever you're doing. It's not, and remember that rebuilding is not about perfection, right? It is about making sure that you have a plan in place and you're not working in chaos. If you know
Mhm.
better, you should do better.
Do better.
Yes, definitely.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
Wow.
and I will say that every plan is going to be different for every person. Where I might recommend something for you, Lisa, that says to put, create an LLC. I might tell Tony to create a C corp or whatever else, and that would be probably in conjunction with the advice of his CPA, depending
Right.
on his tax advice and those kinds of things. So it that's why I say it depends.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is so.
So it's really important just to bring those important people into the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's got to be tailored to you. Like, I think right now, what a lot of people do, and I'm guilty of it myself sometimes, is like, we get stuck on like social media and reels and TikToks and things of that
Yeah.
nature. And we go, oh, well, we know so much.
Right.
And what we don't, what we should be what we should be saying to ourselves is, I know that there's a lot out here that I don't know.
Don't know.
And so
Mhm.
let me
Exactly.
go get the experts to help me that specialize in these things to help. I have an inkling. I have an idea of what it is. Like don't use WebMD to diagnose yourself. But
Exactly.
what you can do is use WebMD to help you identify symptoms to tell the doctor to help you get a
Right. To help
diagnosis. And
you.
it's the same kind of principle.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, because I can't stand I can't stand the Google the
WebMD.
Google doctors. But it does help, like you said, at least to just start to have the conversation so you can at least use the right words and have the right
Exactly.
foundation, right, to start having
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
Lori, what does building legacy look like when you feel like you didn't get it right the first time?
Kind of. So, like I said before, like legacy isn't perfection, right? And so you got to
Okay.
look at it from a perspective of, what you're doing is not going to be perfect, but
Okay.
for legacy, it's continuity, right? It's
Mm,
control, it's clarity, and it's protection, guided by whatever your values are, and then intentionally transferring what you've built onto the next to the folks that are coming behind you or who
Mm,
you want to leave things to. So it's
yeah.
making sure that your business and your assets and your values don't collapse because you didn't give direction or because of poor planning.
mm.
Like
Mhm.
I said earlier, you don't want the state to end up with your stuff, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Because they'll add it to the surplus and keep moving.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so make sure you have a plan as part of your
Absolutely.
legacy, right? It's making sure you have a plan. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do a lot of people shun away from when they hear words like, wills and estate
Yeah.
planning and all that. They think it's so complicated. Why do I need it? Why do I have to go through all of that? But if you could just share like why that's important, but how do things like wills and estate planning give you peace of mind, basically, in this, especially in the second chapter, but just in general.
So one of the things that I tell people is that when we're talking about building an estate plan, don't think about it as you're planning your death. Think about it as you're planning your life. Because an estate plan is not just for what happens to your stuff when you're gone. It's what happens to you while you're still here, what happens to you in the event that you can't make decisions for yourself, who's going to make decisions for the disposition of your, like, what happens to your body, how you want those wishes to be honored, and what's going to work for your values, for your family, for your religious beliefs, all of those kinds
Mm,
of things. So it's planning to make sure that you are taking care of the folks as well that are left behind when you aren't here anymore to do that, and planning for them to have a to not have a worry-free life, because that's not going to happen, right? Or
mhm.
not have, emotions when you pass away, but it's so that you take one more thing off the table that they have to worry about.
Yeah.
um and for me, the other word that you mentioned wills and estate plans, and the one thing that I think I always like to mention it whenever I'm doing these kind of things is trust. Trust, trust,
Mhm.
trust, trust,
Yes,
trust.
yes,
It
yes.
is a word that we don't talk about enough in the community,
You're
and it's
right.
one of those things that that I will actually have a trust document with me at the event on February the 7th, and I will
Mhm.
pass it around the room because I want people to see that a trust is not this mystical document or mystical thing
Exactly.
that people they're afraid of. You will actually be able to see a trust. It's for John Doe. It's not for a real client. Let's
Right.
Okay.
start there. But you'll be able to take that document and take a look at it and see kind of what some of the components are of it.
Yeah.
Don't Just because it's a document doesn't mean you'll be able to do it yourself.
Right, right,
I
right.
don't
And
Yeah.
don't
I do
try it.
not recommend
Yes.
that. But what I want to try to do is demystify that as much as possible and
Yeah.
give people the opportunity to ask questions about those kinds of things, and how they can utilize that as a tool, right? To build
Mhm.
what they want to happen in the future for their family and for themselves.
Yeah.
I think that would be phenomenal because people, again, just lack of information. They've never been taught or told about these things.
Mhm.
And like you say, they sound so mystical, so mystifying and just so complicated. And the way that you're breaking things down is such a high degree of simplicity.
Yeah.
It's just, it provides a little easement.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
I
Mhm.
think a lot of people also feel like, initially, so that years ago, I know when people brought up the word trust, I was like,
yes,
"Isn't that for rich people?"
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah, I was
Exactly.
thinking that myself. I was waiting for one
Right,
of
Exactly.
like,
you
"I
guys to
don't
say
need
it.
that. Isn't that for rich people?" You know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and clearly it's not. So I'm glad that you
Mm-mm.
mentioned and brought up
No.
trust because I think that is another important component that we should definitely be
Yeah.
discussing. Yeah.
So as we get into
Absolutely.
our next question, I think this is a perfect point just to reiterate the fact that, people who are able to come to this event,
Mhm.
these things are going to be clarified by Lori and
Yeah.
made simplistic for them. So I think that's very important.
Yeah.
But another question for you, Lori, is what is the one scenario you see that makes families say, we wish we had known this earlier?
I
So
have
many
to
things,
say,
Oh,
probably.
no.
yeah, I have to come back to blended families. Blended
Mm,
families with no clear plan.
no plan.
Oh,
Um, you know, and, because it always, always, always is gonna lead to heartbreak. You're
Mhm.
always
mm,
gonna have, in the state of in Georgia, like in other states, for example, if you die and you don't have a will, your spouse takes 1/3 of your estate and your children get the rest of it. So
Mm.
imagine leaving your wife in the home that she's been in for the last 40 years, and then your children, your adult children, come in and they say, "Well, you left our mom when we were 20, and we're close in age to your wife too, right? Because she's,
Sure.
and we don't care that you've been married for 40 years. We don't care that her house has been hers for 40 years. It should be ours as well, and we
Right.
wanna force her to sell this house because it's ours too, according to the state law, and
Right.
they can attempt, right? There's some protections that apply, but I've seen these cases go to trial, and so people have to come up with money to pay to lawyers, but they
Mm.
can attempt to try to force her to sell the house and get out of it.
Wow.
And so now you've left your spouse in a very precarious situation because you didn't plan
You
and
didn't
because
plan.
you didn't have conversations with your adult children about what you want. One of the
Mhm.
biggest things that I tell people all the time is, especially if you have a spouse, is plan for plan for security for your spouse, plan for a life insurance policy for your children.
Mm.
Wow.
Right?
Ooh,
Because
I
your
love
children don't
that.
need, I mean,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily need the
They
house,
don't need
right?
the
I mean,
house, right?
it's different if maybe they grew up in that
Live
house
yeah,
and things like
yeah,
that, so maybe you'll take those considerations into play, and you'll leave your spouse a life insurance policy, so as they age, they'll be able to age and then move on into, adult living, senior
sure.
living and things like
Yeah,
that, where that better suits their needs, and then the children be able to move on with the house. But otherwise, plan for the children to get their money from the insurance company, and then let them go on about their lives. 'Cause
right.
like more than likely, they probably don't call you every week anyway.
We talk about
Yes,
that
we talk about that
all the
now
time.
all the time. Yes.
Right, right, right,
You
right.
know?
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was really good. I've
Yeah.
Oh,
never
yes.
thought about it that way, like
I think you've
splitting it up.
enlightened us.
I know, I'm like,
We will definitely say it on the air, so you have
Mhm.
enlightened us.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the event because I think that's sort of, what we're kind of leading
Oh,
up
yes,
to. And we're excited that, we're going to
definitely.
be
Yeah.
co-sponsoring this event, but excited to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be on, like you mentioned, February 7th, 5:30 at Love You Brunches. And it's called
Mhm.
Mindset to Millions. It's going to be run by Dr. Williams of TSM, who is the financial advisor piece. And then, attorney Laurie will be there talking about the estate planning piece of it.
Yes.
So, teaching us how to rewrite our wealth story. So, at this live event, what can people expect? What can they expect when they attend? What will they hear there that they typically may not hear in other, sorts of workshops?
Well, one of the things I've never been to a workshop where an estate planning attorney has passed around a trust, right? It just has never
Right.
happened.
Yeah, I
Or where
know.
they
Yeah,
passed
yeah.
around a will or a power of attorney or an advance directive for people to put their hands on these documents and see them
Mhm.
and then be able to ask direct questions about them. So that's
Mm.
one of the things that, that is going to be different than what you would see at a normal event. But I
Oh,
think also, like, usually they have, a lot of folks have this event and they don't necessarily talk to folks who might also be business owners in the room and about how important it is to plan for that. Because I don't know how many of you guys have looked at the news recently, but there was a couple about maybe last year sometime. There was this thing about, I think it was a liquor store, that the owner died and
Mm,
the police took all the assets of the business out because they hadn't paid the rent. They got evicted, right?
wow.
oh,
And
wow.
all of the products ended up on the streets. And people were
Wow.
like, waiting for the police to disappear so they could, like, enjoy the products, right?
Yeah.
His family didn't get anything from that. Once it was
Right.
out on the streets, his plan, like that business got completely shut down. All of I'm not talking about that's any business, not just that, but that's one example
Yes.
of one that's been in the news recently. But his family didn't get anything from any of that. They didn't get
Mm,
any
Wow.
value from his all of his hard work. So
All the
those are the
relation
things that we see on a regular basis that we definitely want to address and specifically kind of talk about some of that. But we also wanted to give you some strategies along with the financial planner to help you figure out how to rebuild in the best way possible, right? How
mhm,
to protect the assets that you do rebuild and what
mm.
all of that kind of looks like and the and kind of how all those things intersect with each other.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's phenomenal.
Wow, that sounds great.
I
Yeah.
hadn't even thought about that, Lori, but so, a situation like this, an event like this, when we think about who should actually be in the room,
Mhm.
business folk, you just mentioned that, but is there anybody else that we need to speak to that you definitely think that can benefit from the conversation or the content that we're going to be presenting?
I mean, it really is for everybody, right? And when I say
Yes.
for everybody, I do really mean everybody,
Yes.
from divorced folks to people who are remarried to folks who are
Okay.
engaged, to those,
Mm.
maybe even just in a rebuilding stage in their life. And like you said, the business owners, entrepreneurs, so people who maybe they aren't quite there yet, but they're getting there. I mean, it's
Okay.
never too early to get knowledge and information, right? To figure out, okay, who do I need on my team? What kind of plans do I need to put in place? Things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would actually be the perfect time.
Mhm.
Not
Hmm.
there just yet. That would actually be a perfect time,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
absolutely. I wish I had a lot
Yeah.
of this information earlier. Would have
I hear
been
that all
so
the time.
yeah, would have been beneficial.
You might be getting a phone call.
I know. So, I always like to, when I go to events, have in my mind sort of like some questions, right? So,
Hmm.
as people are thinking about attending, what questions do you think they should come prepared to ask? Because sometimes you go to these events, you're like, I don't even know what to ask, right?
Right.
Um, I think, like one of the things for sure is going to be like what happens if I die first. Right?
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
something you don't wanna think about. It's not even something you
Yeah.
wanna say out loud, right? And I have these conversations with people, and I even have these conversations with my family. I'm sure my family is, like, sick and tired of me. Um, we
Right.
had no, seriously, like, we lost 3 people in our family last year, and I
Yeah.
just kept having the conversation, and they were like, "Would you stop already? We're tired of talking about death." And I was like, "But this is the perfect time to talk about it if there is no
Right.
other time, right?"
Right.
But what happens if I die first? And actually myself and my husband have actually had that conversation, ourselves. And then, like who controls what when
Mm.
is it, are the children going to come in? What do they have? What do they, and then how do I protect my children and my spouse? So we've talked about, I'm in a blended family right now. We talked about what happens, when my youngest daughter, if something happens to me, where she's going to go. So it's also like
Mhm.
planning for her
That's
too. She's a
important.
minor.
Or
And I don't have a problem with sharing my part of my story. Her father is deceased.
mm,
So he was my ex-fiance and he died before, like before things happened. And
right,
and so, my husband is basically her father, right? He's the only
right.
person that she's known for the last several years. So we've already put a plan in place about what that's going to look like. My will then has a guardianship provision that gives him custody of our daughter. She's still under 18 if anything ever happens to me. So
Mm.
it's
Right.
those kind of things that you want to kind of be thinking about, right? And you want to
Yeah.
bring your own personal situation. You want to bring your own personal experience and things that you're going through, because as much as I can possibly answer them as broadly as possible,
Mm,
without telling you need a consultation, I will do
right,
that
right,
as much as possible, right? But also, like, if you're a business owner, how do you protect your business, right? And we've talked
right.
about that as
Definitely.
well. I'm an owner in a law firm. I've had conversations with my law partner and conversations with my husband. Our husbands both know what happens if something happens to either one of us. We don't
Mm,
travel
Right.
together
Right.
specifically for that reason. Right? We might be
mhm,
going to the same place, but we don't travel together. We take separate planes, and things like that. We try not to drive in the same car. And I know that sometimes
mm.
that can be, kind of be a
Mm.
little bit
No, that's
extreme, but
smart.
it's
Yeah.
all of those things that we're thinking about that maybe for your business, or you need to be kind of thinking about those kind of things as well.
Sure.
And then what happens, who has control if something happens to me, and then what happens to my company if my personal life changes. So again, it could be disability and not just death that makes
That's true.
makes big changes, and you might need your business to be able to survive in disability.
Right, right, definitely.
Well, there you go, business owners. Some phenomenal
Mhm.
Mhm.
information.
Yeah.
Also, some reasons why you need to come.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
Why you need to be in the
absolutely,
room.
Brandon,
absolutely.
you need to come. Right, babe?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Those are great. I think those are good questions that people can start to think about. And
Yes.
I like the way that you use real case scenarios
Yes.
because that's how I
Mhm.
learn best. I know you give me an example. Okay, I can see myself in it. It sticks better than just kind of
Mhm.
giving me generic, like you mentioned, generic information.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, if someone listening right now finds themselves behind the 8 ball financially or has gone through divorce, found love again, and is trying to build a peaceful future, why is attending this event one of the smartest things they can do for their family?
So we have a saying in our firm that we do justice on purpose, right? And
Mm.
so I thought about that when I was thinking about, like what I was going to tell people, like in terms of coming. And so I definitely have to say that, peace doesn't happen by accident.
Mm,
When you are saying yes again, you are saying yes to clarity. You're saying yes to protection. You're saying yes to building a future on purpose.
right,
And you can definitely go forward and do nothing. But
right.
what is the risk of doing nothing?
Mm,
Oh, yes.
mm.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, huge risk.
Oh, that is just
That was great.
yes.
That was great. I think
Phenomenal.
I think that just wraps up everything that we just talked about.
Yes.
So yeah, so if you were debating whether you were coming to this event or not, I hope that this conversation has changed your mind. So again, on February 7th at Love You Brunches in Conyers, Georgia, we're holding a workshop that I think is going to be phenomenal. It's called Mindset to Millions, Rebuilding Your Legacy or Rewriting Your Wealth Story. And the wonderful attorney, Laurie Thomas Williams, will be there answering all of your questions.
Yes, you will.
And also, you need to register. So, we're going to have the link and everything included in the show notes as well as on our website, sayingyesagain.com. You can go there. The flyer is there, and you can just click on the flyer
Yeah.
and it'll take you right to the registration page. So, please register for the event because spots are limited and make sure
Mhm.
you come out and join us.
Also, bring
That's
your spouse, bring your questions, and leave with the peace of mind that you didn't even realize you were missing.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again,
Oh,
Attorney
thank you,
Thomas
thank you, thank
Williams,
you.
for this wonderful
Yes,
conversation. I think it's going to help so many people. We can't wait to hear from you at the event as well.
yes.
Well,
Great
thank you guys
information.
so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, don't forget again to register for the event. Also, don't forget to follow us and subscribe on all social media. That's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And yeah, and continue to just watch us and make sure that you register for that event.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay. All right. Okay. We'll see you February 7th, Laurie. Thank you so much.
Thank you
All right.
again, Lori. We
Bye.
appreciate all the information.